Let's jump in. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending today's webinar on the ERI pathway. This is recorded, this webinar, and the recording will be posted to our new platform on, you can go coloradoenergycodes.com. And so I'll put that link in the chat, but we launched that a little while ago, and you guys might have seen that in our email outreach, but that is where our webinars will be posted from here on out. All right, so if there are any issues with audio, feel free to write me in the chat. My name is Erica DeLello. I am a senior project manager at Noresco. Sorry, words are hard today, I guess. And let's see what I got on the docket for you. So trainings, we've launched a whole new set of trainings. You can see for the rest of this year. So there will be first Wednesday of the month. We'll have a subject matter expert presenting on any of these topics. We will probably have additional series that come up that we'll be adding, but they won't fall in that Wednesday webinars time slot. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And then let's see, you can always, of course, request trainings directly with me, or we will be launching an on-demand series soon where you can go at your own pace, get CEUs for those courses. And yeah, so that'll be a great, exciting offering, and we'll announce that in our email outreach as well. All right, if you're a jurisdiction looking at updating codes, say before the June 30th deadline, feel free to reach out to me. We offer free technical assistance on the entire iCode suite, but we do request if you are trying to adopt codes by June 30th of this year to notify me by the end of this month. So I'll put my email in the chat, and don't hesitate to reach out. All right. This whole list of resources is just scratching the surface of what's available. Of course, we have building inspector checklists, plans examiner checklists, but as designers or engineers are looking at complying with the low energy and carbon code, we've also created some designer checklists, ComCheck workarounds, all of that good stuff. And we will be covering that in a future session as well. I think it's the May 1st session. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that and register to understand what kind of resources we've got coming out. And last but not least is my favorite resource is that Colorado Codes helpline. You can submit a question on any of the iCodes, and a subject matter expert gets back to you within a couple business days. So definitely utilize that. You can go ahead and scan that QR code, but it is also posted on our eBlasts and the Colorado Energy Office's website. Okay, so just a couple of housekeeping items. We do want to encourage questions, so please use that Q&A function. I'll likely hold a lot of the questions till the end so that we can make sure that Robbie has time to get through it all, but you'll also have the ability to raise your hand. And I will be launching a poll now just so we can see how you heard about this session. And then there will be a post-training survey at the end of this. I send out CEUs usually at the end of each month. So if you want AIA specific credit, please make sure to include your AIA number in the post-training survey. Otherwise, a certificate will be sent out to you automatically. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking and let you take it from here, Robbie.
Okay. So I assume everyone can see the screen. Welcome, I'm Robbie Schwartz with Built Tank Inc. And I'm just going to jump in and actually turn off my video here so you're not looking at the side of my head while we're moving forward. So we're talking about the HERS ERI versus the IECC ERI versus the Colorado Low Energy Code and how they're using that. What I thought would make the most sense for us to do is to actually understand a little bit more about ResNet and what the Residential Energy Services Network is, what the HERS Energy Rating Index, the IECC Energy Rating Index is, and how they're different from each other, and move forward kind of on the same page as we move forward. There's been a lot of different ways that we uh, evaluate the energy use in a building and understand the energy consumption of the building. These types of documents, these types of percentages of energy use for different assets in our house is what ultimately the energy rating index is trying to get at. Is what what are the energy assets and how they're being used, and how do they create a performance of the house there. We also have the Department of Energy that does a determination after each code cycle that is basically determined from the 2006 IECC to the 2024. We had roughly increased the efficiency of our houses by about 45%. The problem with this type of determination is that there's a huge assumption that the energy code um, is actually being implemented and being used to actually create that specific performance in our houses there. So the energy rating index really is evaluating the house, that individual house, and determining the efficiency, or giving us an idea of the efficiency of that house as it stands there. So in ResNet has kind of was introduced, I guess, into the codes in the 2015 cycle. But this idea of energy performance obviously is something that the energy codes have been trying to address for quite some time now. So with regards to the residential energy services network itself, let's understand a little bit more about what's happening there. It's a nonprofit organization that was created in 1995 there. And its original idea was that it was a rating system to be able to market the energy performance of the house, but also give people access to an energy efficient mortgage there. So when I started as a home inspector and an energy rater, and was offering this to people that were trying to get either energy efficient mortgages or energy improvement mortgages, generally at the time of the purchase of the house. Again, ResNet is a nonprofit organization and an organization that now creates national standards using an ANSI standard process. So they work with a lot of different standards as well, and we'll get into that in a second here. The mission of the organization is to make the energy use of all homes transparent, thereby driving residential sector energy use towards zero. That's really a very different metric or use of the energy rating index score or mission of the organization. As we know, the IECC, there's no national consensus that the IECC is the vehicle that's going to take us to zero energy homes. Whether we should be going to zero energy homes or not, that's not really in the preview of the IECC, and or that it's going to address climate issues that are associated with our housing as well. So again, that's pretty different. And when you look at the mission for ResNet, they actually are trying to make the energy use more transparent and actually drive energy use towards zero. The goals are to have 50% of all new homes HERS rated. The average HERS score for new homes are for new homes meet the 2015 IECC Target Energy Rating Index. So ultimately improving the efficiency of the houses out there. Again, as we know, houses that are being built to the 2021 IECC might or might not be meeting that actual level of efficiency from that code. So this is kind of on a national level here, trying to drive the overall efficiency of houses up. 25% of all HERS rated homes are also rated for water efficiency. So this gives us an indication that ResNet has these other scales that are addressing not only energy efficiency in houses, but water efficiency in houses. And we'll see here in a minute that they also have a carbon index for houses as well. Create interest in that carbon index itself, and then the energy efficient mortgage is always a goal of this organization to gain traction in that. It's pretty much has not gotten traction, largely because of the reluctancy of the real estate industry and the mortgage industry to actually adopt it. It takes a little bit more time. It sometimes blows up deals. And, as we know, realtors and mortgage industries are often more interested about getting their commission and the kind of that quest to get the commission versus, offering these mortgages or other things that might slow down that process a little bit more. ResNet was created and now maintains a number of different standards, including the HERS Energy Rating Index standard, which is the standard 301. The standard 301 actually just generates an energy rating index, but they maintain the HERS proprietary index scoring system, the HERS Energy Rating Index, and HERS stands for Home Energy Rating System. They also govern and maintain the HERS H2O rating system, the carbon rating index, which is right now primarily an emissions carbon rating, not an embodied carbon rating that happens in houses, although they're trying to put together a standard to evaluate the embodied carbon, so the carbon that's in the building materials itself. They also offer training and certification and quality assurance standards for home energy raters specifically. And they have three ANSI standards that are out there as well. And also 4 standard development committees that are working in that ANSI process there. ResNet's committed to quality, and they try to establish these standards and standard setting committees there in order to maintain that quality and provide quality out there in the marketplace. Each committee's purpose is to provide the ResNet board with policy implementation and technical guidance. So these committees, these standard setting committees, basically ultimately answer to the ResNet board there that make the final decisions. The standard committees that are out there are you can see listed here. I'm involved with the Standard Development Committee 300, which is the committee that works on the development of the ANSI 301 standard for the development of the ERI score itself there. This standards development process used to be housed in what was called the Mortgage Industry National Home Energy Rating System standards. That standards has been basically divided into 2 things. Now there are the HERS standards that the ResNet organization works from, and then there are standards like the ANSI 301 standard that govern how to create an energy rating index score. ResNet standards are recognized by the industry and other governmental bodies for quality assurance, for verification of energy savings for mortgages, for verifications of programmatic compliance for programs like Energy Star and the DOE, what used to be called the DOE Zero Energy Ready Homes Program. It's now called the DOE Efficient Homes Program, and the International Energy Conservation Code now since the 2015 IECC. There also used to be some federal tax incentives that utilized the ResNet standards for how to determine the efficiency requirements for the federal tax credits, but those tax credits recently went away. Now, ResNet's standards development process, basically anyone can propose a standard, just like anyone can propose a code change there. But unlike most of the code hearing process, it's not the codes in general, even the energy rating code now is not a true continual ANSI standard maintenance process. The energy code is a quasi-ANSI continual maintenance process, meaning that they are it's a hybrid process between kind of the code hearings and the ANSI process, and the normal code hearings are that code hearing process there. So it's a little bit different than the ANSI process. So proposals are reviewed by the Standard Management Board, and those proposals are either accepted or not accepted. Accepted proposals are assigned to the proper standard development committee for further development, and then fully development proposals are ultimately taken out and given public comment for a minimum of 30 days. And that's open to anybody who's interested in making a public comment. And then the public comments are reconciled and put together and ultimately recommended to the board of directors who make the final decision of whether the standard proposal will ultimately make its way into the standard itself here. So the ResNet HERS ratings are based on the ANSI 301 standard, but there's also the 310 standard and the 380 standard that are incorporated into this. Um, the 310 standard is a standard for how to evaluate HVAC commissioning, in essence, to determine the quality of the install and how that install affects the efficiency of the system. That can affect the score in an energy rating system. And then the 380 standard is a standard for how to do specific tests, like a blower door test or a duct leakage test there. There are other requirements that are specifically housed in the ResNet HERS standards there as well. And most proposed changes to the ANSI 301 standard have to make their way through the HERS standard in order to ultimately get into the ANSI 301 standard. And the reason to know that is that the ResNet HERS standard is still a proprietary standard that kind of governs of how the ResNet Energy Rating Index system works. And the ANSI 301 standard is a public standard that the IECC uses, and there are a couple other bodies or entities around the country that have developed an energy rating index system that is not governed by the ResNet board, I guess, there. So what ultimately is an energy rating index? And it's really important when we start talking about code that we understand the differences between the HERS energy rating index or energy rating indexes in general, or I guess, and more importantly, how we utilize a HERS index in a code setting versus how ResNet is using a HERS index. So ultimately, a HERS index is an asset rating. So you're evaluating all of the energy assets in a home, and you're trying to determine how to score them so that you can get an idea of the overall energy efficiency of a home. So like a golf score, the lower the score, the more efficient the house is. And also like a miles per gallon rating, it doesn't matter the size of the house or the size of the car. It doesn't matter who manufactured that car or that home. You can get an indication of the energy efficiency of that house by looking at that index score or looking at the miles per gallon rating for a car there. So those are really analogous types of systems there. The HERS reference home, which is the house that your rating is compared to, is set at the 2006 IECC there. So when we're doing an energy rating index score for a 2020 house that was built to the 2021 IECC, it's being evaluated against a house that's reaching 100 on the scale, that's equal to the 2006, and that's why it would be significantly lower. It would score significantly lower on that scale there. Generally speaking, every point on the scale is equal to 1% of energy use in reference to 100 on the scale. So you know that if you're better than the 2006 IECC, you're going to be lower on the scale. If you're worse, you're going to be higher on that scale. The Department of Energy, or I guess the system in general, has figured out that 0 on that scale is equal to that net zero home. Remember, there's a difference between net zero and absolute zero. Net zero means that it's kind of energy agnostic. It's meaning that if you have a gas powered home, that over the course of a year, it's going to net out that energy use that's being used by electricity, by power that you might have generated with a PV system on your home there. The Department of Energy has determined that 130 on the scale is equivalent to the average existing home that's out there in the market there. Now, the ResNet structure is structured by using providers in that system. So providers have this are basically out there to support energy raters, builders, and code officials out there. The ResNet accredited provider are these key partners that maintain and improve the HERS and ANSI standards throughout the industry at large. And there are a number of different types of providers out there, including providers for software tools, energy rating providers, quality assurance providers. If you're running a sampling system, now sampling is only allowed for multifamily buildings, meaning that I don't have to test every single dwelling unit in order to generate a HERS score, or there are other ways that you can use sampling for testing, blower door testing or duct leakage testing. There are training providers and so forth and so on out there. Now, the rating providers themselves ensure the quality assurance and the quality of the rating services that they provide. They're responsible for the administration of a rating program that's actually utilizing the HERS energy rating system there. Their responsibilities include the actual certification of raters that might be aligned with them or actually working with them. So you can be a HERS rating company and be a provider, as well as having HERS raters there, or you can be a provider that a HERS rating company is kind of affiliated with to get all these other benefits from, I guess. So they select the actual software that is used for their particular system. So some energy rating companies and providers are using Ecotrope software, for example, and some are using REMrate software, or some are using EnergyGaze software. Those are the three main softwares that are out there. They're not all potentially using the same software. These providers are required to do quality assurance. They might offer some marketing services there. And raters and rating companies, again, can either be aligned with a provider, or the provider could be the owner of the energy rating company as well there. Training providers obviously provide training, and they are the organization that train energy raters to do that type of work. And then ultimately, I think I have a slide on it later on here, but ultimately the provider is the one that certifies the rater, and they have to do a kind of basically an apprenticeship. They have to do a certain number of ratings before they can be and pass a test in order to become a certified rater out there. The ResNet system also has software providers. These software providers have interpreted the standards in order to create a software system that can do the calculations. And after somebody's done the assessment of the home, the rating of the home, the inspection of the home, they enter all that data into the softwares to create the energy rating index itself there. Software is the simulation tool that has this approved software program. Then there's the compliance materials here. So I bring this up. So this is specific to the 2024 IECC here. In the 2024 IECC, they say that you have to use an energy simulation software tool, and it's actually a defined term because there is a prescriptive energy modeling approach that uses a software similar, it could be the ResCheck software, it could be another software to do that UA analysis or the total component analysis, but those softwares have to be approved. And unlike ResNet, IECC doesn't have a real process for approving softwares. So ResNet and IECC, their relationship is pretty strong. I project sometime in the future that IECC is going to ask ResNet to utilize their approved software kind of techniques and potentially be an oversight organization for approved softwares that can be used for ICC or IECC compliance there. These are the sections of the code where software is talked about and the approved software is talked about. You can see it's in Chapter 1 in the R405 Total Building Performance Approach and also in the R406 Energy Rating Index Approach. But again, ICC isn't out there actually approving softwares or software programs that can be done for these analysis there. So I think ResNet's going to take that over at some time in the future there, is my personal opinion. What is a HERS rater? So a HERS rater is this certified individual that's accredited by a provider to go out there and look at the minimum rated features. So in essence, when we're looking at the assets of the house, we have to know what we're going to look at, what types of things we're evaluating there. The completed home energy rating has to be done in accordance with the ResNet standards there in order to develop a HERS Energy Rating Index score. The ResNet standards, again, are a group of standards that includes the ANSI 301 standard, but it includes other things as well, in the same way that when you do a R406 Energy Rating Index, it includes ANSI standard 301, but there are other requirements for inspections that are in sections R402 through R404 of the code there. So what we're ultimately getting at is that kind of the lens that we're looking at is potentially a little bit different here, and we'll get to that in a moment. The home energy raters are certified, so they have to pass a test that demonstrates their skill set. And that is all defined in Chapter 2 of the ResNet HERS standards. They have to go through a provider that's a training provider, and that curriculum is actually accredited by ResNet. The instructors are also certified by ResNet, and all home energy rating candidates must pass this national exam, this online written exam, and then they need to perform at a minimum 5 ratings under the supervision of an accredited rating field assessor that could be aligned with the provider there, because it's ultimately the provider who certifies that rating candidate to be a certified energy rater. And then you have to do a certain number of continuing education units each year in order to keep your certification, and also you're subject to quality assurance, which we'll talk about here in a second. So the energy rating is basically following this process. It's basically an idea. If you think about a rating as an inspection process, you would do an from plans analysis, similar to what you would do with a plan review there. And then you would do an analysis that would result in a projected or pre-construction HERS Energy Rating Index score for that house. That's also required by the code. You have to turn in this analysis to get your building permit. And then before construction begins, you're needing to understand how you might be utilizing that energy rating. During construction, the rater would go in and look at the minimum rated features and do this on-site inspection of the house. It includes, at a minimum, a rough inspection and a final inspection there. And again, this is kind of oriented to creating a HERS Energy Rating Index. And remember, HERS Energy Rating Index was originated primarily to look at existing homes, and then has moved over to looking at new homes and new construction. So you might need more than just a rough inspection and a final inspection in order to do it correctly in a new construction environment. And the result is this confirmed HERS Energy Rating Index score at the end of the process that's been done by a HERS rater. But besides a HERS rater, there's also a HERS modeler. So if you're using a HERS modeler, you might be breaking up the task and taking it out of the preview of just one individual, a HERS rater, and you might be using a HERS modeler and a rating field inspector. The rating field inspector is certified as well. They also are subject to quality assurance, but they must work under the direct supervision of a certified rater. So almost always a certified rater is also is a energy modeler, but an energy modeler is a new designation that you don't have to be a certified rater in order to do. And the data that a rating field inspector needs to go back to either the certified rater or the certified energy modeler, who will ultimately generate the home energy rating index score through that energy software analysis. So they can conduct the field inspections, but they can't conduct any of the energy modeling if you are an RFI. So it's kind of created a career progression in the industry that would take you from being a rating field inspector to a rater, and then maybe into the office and just doing energy modeling there. We're not going to talk a lot about the uh, HERS H2O rating system there. Just know that it is another energy rating system out there, but is specific to water and the scarcity of water there, so the efficiency of water production. Also, with regards to the carbon rating, some jurisdictions are really interested in carbon and potentially going to a carbon rating type system there. ResNet has created one that's primarily about operational carbon, and they're starting to move into how to include embodied carbon, the carbon that's embodied in our building materials there as well. The IECC rating process kind of begins with this plan review, building envelope leakage testing, duct leakage testing, but it also includes drywall testing or testing before drywall is installed, so evaluation of the insulation and the air barrier systems and all these other things that are part of the energy efficiency of the house. So you can see why this rating process was kind of brought into the code world. And because of that, ICC has created some certifications. They have the certification for the Residential Energy Inspector and Plans Examiner, which is the designation for a code official inspector or plans examiner who might be specializing in the energy code. And for energy raters, they have the ICC HERS compliance specialist, which means that they have the ICC certification for energy inspector and plans review, but they are also a certified HERS energy rater. So they are designated as this ICC HERS compliance specialist with that kind of badge and certification process there. Quality assurance is important to talk about, and ResNet has created this certified quality assurance designee or QAD. Their job is to look at a minimum 10% of the building software files that are created by an energy rating, and 1% of each certified rater's home energy rating score is supposed to be recreated and reviewed for accuracy. So they should be going on site and recreating the performance testing and evaluating that site, ultimately recreating the whole energy rating analysis, and then comparing their analysis as a QAD to the field raters analysis that they did out in the field there. So the biggest thing to understand that, even though all of these things happen, the QAD evaluates the rater and ResNet evaluates QADs, and this whole system has been created out there for quality assurance, but it's only for quality assurance for the HERS energy rating index. And there's been some confusion out there that when a rater is doing code compliance type ratings for either the R408 path or the energy rating index pathway in the code, the R406 pathway, that it's also accompanied with some level of quality assurance from ResNet. And definitively, right now, that is not the case. The quality assurance only happens for HERS energy rating indexes there. And they tried to be super transparent about all of that. And part of that transparency is creating this national registry. But the national registry and all the information that goes into the national registry only is associated right now with homes that are getting a HERS energy rating index score. So you can look on the national registry and you can see if a HERS energy rater is currently in good standing, if they are certified or if they are on probation or whatnot. But you can also go on and look at specific houses. Has that house been energy rated? Does it have an energy rating score that's associated with it as well there? So here's the website to basically see if a rater is certified or not. And then that transparency goes on to specific houses as well. And you can look at this website to search for specific addresses to see if that house has been rated or not. The ResNet system also includes codes of ethics and disclosures here. So every time a HERS energy rating is performed and the results are given to whoever paid for those results, you have to accompany that with this disclosure form that says, that you're being paid for the service. And also, if you're offering other services, you need to disclose those services as well. Quantifying the energy use of the house there. So that's ultimately what the HERS energy rating system is. And because we're using that HERS energy rating system in our houses, in the 2024 IECC, we were able to get a more holistic idea of how the approved third-party inspection agency should be used. So I would really encourage you to take a look at this section. We did a whole class last Friday at the Colorado the Colorado chapter of the ICC's Education Institute on approved third parties. We went through these sections in more depth. And one of the things that we learned is that a lot of jurisdictions believe that energy raters are doing a full set of code compliance for that house when they might not be. They might just be generating an energy rating index, and ultimately the lens in which they are looking at the house is different. So this whole approved third party section that's new to the 2024 IECC, that's been accentuated in the 2024 IECC, basically gets at how do we create a memorandum of understanding, a scope of work, so that we all know what we're asked to do, what we're not asked to look at, and through what lens we're supposed to be looking at it through. So let's move on. Now that we have a better understanding of ResNet and kind of the difference between ResNet and the IECC, let's look specifically at the IECC and what section R406 is asking us to do. The first thing is that this energy rating index, or the HERS energy rating index, can be a byproduct of other energy modeling that the code might be asking you to do. So if you're doing energy modeling for the total component alternative or the UA alternative or the R405 total building performance alternative, you could easily push a button and create an energy rating index score. And if it's a HERS energy rating index score and you haven't amended your code to accept that, it is not a code compliant document. So HERS ultimately is a proprietary term, and because it's a proprietary term, you weren't able to add it to the code language when it was adopted into the code. So they came up with energy rating index, and energy rating index is kind of this Kleenex or Xerox or Coke of the industry. It's just this general language that's describing an energy rating index. And in order to know what kind of energy rating index you're using, you really need to understand, are you using a HERS energy rating index or an IECC energy rating index? Or potentially even the Energy Star program utilizes the energy rating index in a slightly different way than HERS does. So we need to know all of those different things there. So we talked about the energy rating index and what it is. Let's look at how it's being used from a code compliance. But just remember that this energy rating index certificate is not the certificate that the code official should be looking for. Again, unless you've amended your code to specifically require the ResNet HERS energy rating index rather than the IECC energy rating index. The other thing that we need to know specifically about these systems here is that if you fully maximize the building thermal envelope and the mechanical systems in that house, you cannot get below about 35 on energy rating index system there. Everything below 35 is you achieve by adding photovoltaics or solar power to that house to get to that zero or net zero home there. So we have these different kind of benchmarks on our systems there. We could also, from a code perspective, say, I want you to achieve at least an energy rating index of 50 on that scale because I believe that at 50 you've maximized your mechanical and envelope efficiencies enough, but I need to make sure that I do that before solar is taken into the equation. Because if I build at 100 and I put on about a 6 kilowatt PV system on that house, I can drive it to that 50 without significantly ensuring that the building thermal envelope, the mechanical systems in that house are done. So you'll see that there are a lot of jurisdictions that have amended the codes to accept an energy rating index before on-site renewable and after on-site renewable. And you'll see Appendix RC has done that as well. And we'll see that the low energy and carbon code has done that as well. Ultimately, how softwares work to create these energy rating indexes is it's all about the delta T across the building thermal envelope. And that's ultimately why it's so crucial for us to depict the building thermal envelope and have a clear understanding that the building thermal envelope is that boundary condition that separates conditioned space from unconditioned space. When we do the energy model itself, we do all those takeoffs of the house. We build the house inside of the software, and the software creates two homes that are geometric twins of each other. One is called the reference home that is overlaid with either the code U-value table, or in the case of the energy rating index, the reference home requirements that are outlined in the standard 301 that create a reference home that is equivalent to the 2006 IECC. So all the insulation levels, all the mechanical efficiencies, all the house tightness, all those things, those energy assets that are equivalent to a house that is going to perform equal to the 2006 IECC. So that's why the reference home is defined as generating a specific, consistent, and quantifiable energy use, because that's what the reference home does. It gives us that specific, quantifiable, and energy performance of that house. Now, the rated home is whatever the builders decided to do. You compare the rated home to the reference home, and in this system, it benchmarks the rated home using an energy rating index determined on is it better than the reference home at 100 or not. So you're benchmarking that house on the energy rating index score, and let's say it scores 60. It means that it's basically about 40% better than the reference home of 2006. So when we take this concept to code, we see that we have the energy modeling processes happening where we have two houses that are geometric twins of each other. The reference home is still utilizing the ANSI standard 301 for the R406 compliance pathway, the builder can still do what in the world they want to do in that house there. Um, uh, but the energy rating index scores, basically the builder's houses compared to the reference home, we're given an energy rating index score, and we have to take that energy rating index score to the code table that says, are we compliant or not? This is a little bit different than the modeling that happens for the total UA path or the total component path, for example, where the builder's house just has to be better than or equal to the reference home. In this case, we're using the reference home to generate an energy rating index, and then we're taking the energy rating index to a table that says, is it better than or equal to whatever is required in that specific climate zone there. So when we do this for code compliance, we have to do a projected energy rating index. Again, this isn't the compliance document for code, but we do a projected report and we do a confirmed report. So this is where it would be on these home energy rating systems. That's where it's called out. Is it a projected report or a confirmed report? Now, for the code, we have to understand that the IECC ERI score, or Energy Rating Index, is not the same thing as the HERS Energy Rating Index score. That's because in the Energy Rating Index pathway of the code, in the past, they actually amended ANSI standard 301. We see in the R406 pathway in the 2024 IECC, they removed that pathway, or they removed that amendment that amended the standard 301. So our scores are closer to each other, but they're actually often not exactly the same. So the scope here is basically that this chapter establishes the criteria for compliance utilizing the energy rating index score. This analysis shall be limited to dwelling units. So because the residential section of the IECC is looking at residential buildings that are 3 stories or less, you might get dwelling units in a multifamily building that could utilize this. So that's also new to the 2024 IECC. When we're looking at the ResNet ERI versus the IECC's ERI, again, we need to understand what lens we're looking at it and how we're looking at that house a little bit differently from a code perspective versus a ResNet HERS perspective there. And that takes us back to the chapter 1 approved third party thing that we were talking about earlier. Basically, ERI compliance is based on the ERI requirements that the rated design and as the building dwelling unit ultimately meets these 2 requirements. The first requirement is detailed out in table R406.2. That's basically all the requirements for how you install different components of the building thermal envelope and some mechanical systems in sections R402 through R404. And then you have to meet the specific ERI values that are indicated in the table R406.5. So that energy modeling, again, is benchmarking the ERI score for a specific house. And then you have to take it to the table to see if it passes or not. Changes in the 2021 ICC changed these things called backstops, and it also removed the ventilation changes that were made to or amended to the ANSI 301 standard. So our scores are going to be closer to each other, but they are not always going to be equal to each other, meaning that if I do a HERS rating on one house and I do an IECC energy rating on that same house, I'm not always going to get exactly the same score for that house there. So I keep reiterating that because they are potentially different scores. In the 2024 IECC, we see that really things haven't changed much from the 2021 IECC, except the introduction I'm sorry, this is for the low energy and carbon code. You see the indication up in the top right hand corner with the Colorado symbol there. They added in the R409 section, and the R409 section is the pre-electrification section. So remember that the low energy and carbon code doesn't require that we install electrification in our houses, but that we are ready in the future to potentially install an induction cooking or electric heat pump for heating and cooling and water heating, and or PV panels and EV charging for electric vehicles there. So again, it doesn't require that we do that now, but it requires sometime in the future that we do that. So that's the big difference at this stage between the normal 2024 IECC and the 2024 IECC that's been amended by the Low Energy and Carbon Code here in Colorado. Verification can happen either by an approved third party, um, or by the jurisdictions, but the ERI score itself can only really be created by an approved third party, which is generally a home energy rating. So we made sure that that's been broken apart, because a lot of times in the past in older codes like the 2015 and 2018 IECC, it just said ERI compliance, basically all 406 compliance would be done by an approved third party. And what we realized is that R406 table, all the requirements that are housed in the R402 through R404 section, energy raters might or might not be able to do that. If they have that ICC certification, maybe they're better able to do that. But we have to have an agreement or an understanding or at least a conversation with the third party if you want them to do more than just generate the energy rating index score for that house. So again, looking at this section of the code makes a lot of sense there. These are the sections that are required from the R401 actually through R404 sections. They're mainly dealing with installation of things that have to be reviewed either by the authority having jurisdiction or after a conversation by the approved third party there. Now, the building thermal envelope, this whole notion of backstops has been added to the codes. And in the 2024, it continues this. The way it's being used in the 2024 is to ensure that you don't have to use the additional energy efficiency packages there. You just, depending on your climate zone, we're in climate zone 5, so we have to be 15% better than we would normally. And so the equation down there at the very bottom shows how the total component, basically my building thermal envelope has to be 15% better than it would be just utilizing the R value table to build that house, and then using the additional efficiency packages through the prescriptive pathway. So this avoids the prescriptive requirement of using the additional efficiency packages and just says through energy modeling, we're going to demonstrate that it's already 15% better than. For the low energy and carbon code in Colorado, they're doing the same thing. They just made it specific for our climate zone. So they've took out any reference to climate zones 0 through 3 there, because they're just irrelevant to our state ultimately. In the 2024 IECC calculation of the energy rating index score is spelled out. This is where they removed the amendment in the older codes that amended ventilation. So you can see in the 2024, the removed amendment, that was basically amendment from the 2023 62.2 ventilation standard that's used in ANSI 301. They amended it back to the 2010 version of that standard there. So they also added on the statement here that mechanical ventilation rates used for the purposes of determining ERI shall not be construed to establish minimum ventilation requirements for compliance with this code, because the code uses a different ASHRAE standard Again, it's the 2010 version versus the 301 uses the 2023 version. So again, because they removed this in the ERI section of the code, the scores have come together a little bit more, but they often are not going to be exactly the same. For the 2024 version of the IECC that was amended in the low energy and carbon code in Colorado, they've also added some things to this compliance pathway here. Basically, they've created house sizes and slightly different compliance mechanisms based off of house size. So if you're less than 5,000 square feet, if you're 5,000 square feet or to 7,500 square feet, or if you are over 7,500 square feet, you actually have to move to Appendix RC. How that is actually implemented, let's look at that. For the base 2024 or 2015, they used these index scores. The 2018 those scores rose a bit. In the 2021, they went back down to the 2015 levels. In the 2024 IECC, they broke it up to saying you have to reach a score before on-site power production is added, and then if you optionally decide to add on-site power production, there's an additional requirement to lower your score or add a certain amount of solar energy to your house. This is in the 2024 base code. It is not a mandate to add PV to the house. It's basically saying that if you do add PV to the house, you have to add enough PV in our climate zone to take it from a 54 to a 43. That could be, depending on the house and the location and the solar access there, that could be just a little bit of solar panels, or it could be a lot of solar panels. In the low energy and carbon code, they are requiring you to reach a certain level, a certain ERI score if you're less than 5,000 square feet, a certain ERI score if you're between 5,000 and 7,500 square feet or 7,499 square feet. You can see it's a little bit lower, so bigger houses, you have to have a little better performance. And then if you're over 7,500 square feet, if you're those really large houses, then you have to go to Appendix RC, which is basically a zero energy appendix, and you have to not only ensure that your building thermal envelope and mechanical systems are good before on-site solar is put into the equation, then you have to go to zero energy. So ultimately how much solar you have to add in order to get it to zero in those very large houses there. ERI-based compliance for the base 2024 says that the maximum energy rating index, not including on-site power, shall be permitted for buildings with 20 or more dwelling units. They shall be permitted to use the average dwelling unit energy rating index. So in essence, that notion of sampling different units in the system is starting to be allowed in the codes, not only for the generation of the energy rating index, but for blower door testing and duct leakage testing. So if you're testing this type of building there, you might be able to use that with this exception here. Okay. Heat pumps in the low energy and carbon code, the 2024 IECC with the low energy and carbon code amendments. They also have this section that's dealing with heat pumps, buildings, and ERI reductions. In essence, the low energy and carbon code is trying to take out fuel bias in these houses and ensure that electrification isn't unduly penalized by the energy rating index system, because the energy rating index system is biased a little bit towards gas energy. So they're saying that if you're using a heat pump, you're permitted to increase the energy rating index scores by 5 points there to take out that bias. Now, ultimately, compliance works the same way with all the codes. You have to demonstrate what the energy rating index is for that house, and then you take it to the tables to determine if it complies or not, and you're utilizing these softwares, and these softwares, in theory, are supposed to be approved softwares. Right now, IECC doesn't have a means to actually approve those softwares. That's what I was getting at earlier here. Um, we just have a couple more seconds and a couple more slides here. So we're going to push on. I understand if you have to leave here, but the energy rating index score under the 2024 IECC uses the ANSI standard. The ResNet HERS energy rating index score, however, uses the ANSI, a different ANSI standard, the 301 standard there. It's also a dynamic score, which means that during continual maintenance of the standard, they're adding that into their HERS standards and seeing how it impacts the score and whatnot before it ultimately goes into the next version of the ANSI 301 standard there. So we need to understand that the results might not be exactly the same. This is proved out in the older versions of the scores. This is the same house with different systems. In the 2015 IECC, they were actually using exactly the same standard. So you see a 63 for the energy rating index score of the house, but the energy rating index score for IECC was also a 63. But when that ventilation amendment happened, the score for the house remained at 63 in the HER system, and it went up to a 74 in the IECC system. In the 2021, it was still different. In this case, 63 for HERS, 78 for the 2021 IECC. In the 2021 IECC, they removed that halfway through the process. The rating software realized that they weren't actually evaluating the houses exactly how the code was asking them to do, hence the need for that software oversight there. And once they realized that, they changed the software modeling tool, and you see how the scores got closer together. In the HERS side, it was a 50. On the IECC side, it was a 52 for the same house. In the 2024 IECC, currently we're seeing that the scores are the same, but that score is going to change over time there because they're adopting these standards in the process there. So this will be available on the website. I'm sorry I'm going over a little bit, but we have to do all of these things in order to comply with the energy rating index scoring system for the 2024 IECC there. And just to conclude here, we have to remember that the ResNet HERS system is an asset rating. The IECC is basically a target rating. You're trying to achieve a specific energy rating index target there. Almost always the scores won't be the same for each other. They're in the 2024 system right now, they're the same or very close to each other, but they're not always going to be the same there. So you have to understand that. Adoption is referencing the ANSI 301 standard. And for the HERS system, the HERS ERI is also using that standard, but there are other things that are making those scores not be exactly the same as each other. And then remember, approved third parties. If you're using an approved third party for code compliance, you want to make sure that you have a conversation and understand what they're looking for and what they might not be looking for to make sure that they're aligned with each other. And then lastly, the low energy and carbon code really hasn't changed the system that much, besides adding the size factor to the equation there. So again, I apologize for going over a little bit. I'm more than happy to stick around and have a conversation if anybody would like to talk about it a little bit more.
All right. Thanks, Robbie. Appreciate it. I know that was a lot of information to get through. We do have a couple of questions. Stop the recording.